Great. Thanks very much, Lucy. Another question again. You mentioned it just after it was posed, but just to clarify, is television as bad as the devices?
No, and that's the point. So I did
Yeah.
include it saying, look, if you're looking at screens and we're trying to find in betweens, I'm super realistic as both a practitioner and a parent. Okay. Television we consider to be passive. Does that make any sense to you? Now, again, there are suggestions that even the TV would need to be off the hour before bedtime. But I feel actually sometimes watching the TV, watching an episode with your child, or letting them turn off the gadgets and the computer games. The computer game is interactive. That's doing your brain is in high alert as a result. It's stimulating. So what we're really looking for here, and I'm sure you can hear it, is we're looking for things to slow down, to calm down, so that we can begin to initiate our body and our brain to get to sleep. Like modern life has hugely impact how we experience our sleep. So I mentioned there even the dim lighting. So let's say tonight here in my office, I've got a big light on, as I call it, a big light. But really we don't want big lights on because the brain sees the big light as the sun. And then it's confused because it's thinking, what is the sun doing when we're supposed to be getting ready for sleep? So dim and low lighting are helpful because they help entrain the body and the circadian rhythm in line with all the other little changes that you make to then help initiate the process and the ease with which we get to sleep.
Great. And I think there was a question posed around somebody asking about YouTube and that, and there's a question in the box. What do you think about, I suppose, headspace sleep casts and wind down meditations?
Yeah, like I'd be a big advocate of anything that is supporting us to relax further, if that makes any sense to you. And again, it can often take time to figure out what feels right, what is helpful, and what isn't to that particular person. But I think those, something that you listen to, a podcast, an audiobook, these are all really good in betweens, other than the laptop, the gaming device, and the phone, because it's those gadgets that have the lighting that are stimulating the waking part of the brain and sending the wrong messaging. And look, meditation, listening to it, practicing it, breathing are all designed to help slow us down. And that's what we're trying to do to help the onset of sleep.
And again, just to, if you could re-mention around the phone, there's a specific question around how long should you be phone free before bed? I think for ourselves as much as the
I
children,
know. And
some
listen,
people.
I'm going to preface it again by saying I know how difficult this is. And I also will be completely honest that I sometimes keep my phone with me until I'm going to bed. Okay. But I also will say I don't actually struggle with sleep, if that also makes sense. So the point is, when we're struggling, we often have to make high level changes. So it's a little bit like if we're going to try and get fit, we've got to make high level changes. If we're going to try and eat better, we make high level changes. And sleep is exactly the same. In fact, it's the third pillar of health and well-being. So for that reason, I would probably be gentle and say the hour before bedtime. But in some studies, it is suggested 1 to 2 hours before bedtime. But I suppose trying to be realistic with, how we live as digital natives. We're not digital natives necessarily our age group, but obviously our children are. And I suppose it's just trying to have that boundary. And if we initiate these changes early on, so if you're the parent of a young adolescent, you've got a lovely opportunity here because hopefully they haven't had the phone for that long, since their confirmation maybe, and now they're in first year. So you've got a nice opportunity to kind of create those boundaries and these segues that mean we put the phone away, we engage in some nice family activity. I know this isn't necessarily just about me, but let's say I obviously have had a lot of teenagers in my home. And one way that we helped navigate that is we introduced what we called a family meeting. So it was a nice opportunity. We just gathered together and we all had a little chat, but it meant that the gadgets were left behind and it just didn't feel as big as the big, let's turn everything off. It just was I've used the word segue a few times tonight. I think of sleep as a series of transitions, and our task as parents, in collaboration with our young child, is to try and help create smooth transitions so that it is easy for their brain and their body to get to sleep. And that's what you're trying to initiate and stimulate.
Thank you. And there's two more. I might pose those. I'm not sure, Emmett, if you have some, but I might just cover these two. There's just to repeat your advice around asthma. You mentioned salt, something they just missed them.
I did, and sorry, I did breeze over that. I suppose, first of all, there are so many things that impact our sleep. So pretty much everything impacts sleep. Everything we think and feel, see, do, eat, and drink in fact impact our sleep. So it's sleep is emotional, it's physiological, it's psychological, it's environmental. And then of course it can be health related. So if we have a child, young person who has had, first of all, anything like restless leg, asthma, upper respiratory issues, they all impact sleep. So again, if they've been coughing or they have allergies, sinus issues, I have found there is a little device. It's called a salt air purifier. I'm in no way affiliated with them. It's made by a company called Salons. I own one myself for my allergy ridden child. It is helpful to put the salt into the air, which has proven to help open up the airways and help breathing be easier. And I have found it to be a very useful tool in my practice.
Thank you for that. And finally, just one last question came in there is, would you recommend BACH flower rescue and night remedy for children, for kids? Yeah.
If it is suitable for a child, and again, you'd need to check the age group that it's suitable for. And again, that would come under, like a natural remedy. And there is some evidence to support the use of some of those remedies, but sometimes I think actually it's more about the ritual of introducing the remedy, if that also makes sense to you, because we start having, we do this every night, we drink this, we begin this wind down. And so I would be a big advocate of anything in a natural theme that helps to relax and unwind the body, whether that's a little drink, whether that's a remedy that is suitable for the age group that you're thinking of giving it to. And again, that we're not masking things either, that we're still looking at the sleep hygiene pieces, because that's really what we're discussing tonight. It is having a positive sleep practices and sleep hygiene within your household, creating the environment, creating the opportunity, okay, and understanding that how we wake up in the morning is one of the biggest determinants of how we get to sleep at night. So just repeating that, as difficult as it is, get up when you're supposed to get up rather than pressing the snooze. Give yourselves enough time so we're not starting the day on adrenaline and stressed, that we have a moment to connect in the morning time and get ready without a big rush. We can be exposed to morning light and movement. And of course, school has part to play in this. So like if we could start every day with a class that involved movement, that would be amazing. If we could also lower the amount of homework that sometimes we get, that could also be helpful, because a lot of kids are coming home from school, doing their extracurricular, trying to get all their homework done, so they don't have time for this elaborate wind down that I am suggesting. So we're looking for collaboration, not just with our team, but we're also looking collaboration with the outside worlds as well that they're involved in.
Thanks for that. Thanks, Lucy. And thanks, Orla. I have a few questions that came in online, and we'll try and get a few of them. We're going to be finishing up around 5 past, so we'll cover what we can in the few minutes we have left, right? But there's can too much sleep be a problem as well? My child gets 9 hours of sleep at night, but then sleeps most of the time during the day after school as well. Is there any tips around? Is this normal?
Well, don't forget that we suggested that, somewhere between 9 to 10 hours was optimal. Okay. And of course, with any of these suggestions, where they go from 8 to 10, there is also a little subsection that, some children are getting less, and there is always a subsection of children getting more. And that would be considered normal, if you like. I guess I'm always very wary about answering this question and saying flippantly, yes, that sounds normal, because I suppose I would want to look at the whole picture. Like if your child is getting 9 hours and then taking a nap, again, they're getting their 10 hours in 2 phases. Are they sleeping well? Do they seem like they're well rested? Does this indicate anything else? Does that make any sense to you? So always something that just like a wider zoom out. So I'm very aware of some children getting more sleep, and that's what they need. Similar to, let's say, adults needing, some will need more and some will need a little bit less, and some will do well on very little. But again, we always worry about what's going on underneath the surface. But I would say typically, yeah, that sounds fairly standard. But does she seem like she's well rested?
Okay. And what about this one? Teens that are neurodiverse, right? Parent as a child that's neurodiverse, it seems that their sleep cycle is different. Is there anything we'd say around that?
Yes, it's
Uh,
not a huge area of my expertise, but absolutely I am aware of that. And it would seem that the sleep total is different for a child with neurodiversity. Now, in my practice, I work with children up to the age of 6, and I do find that there is a disparity. They find it more difficult to switch off, which I'm sure you're already super aware of, and they often need a little bit less. So it's trying to find out what helps them to switch off and wind down, and where do we put bedtime so that they still get enough sleep. So we're closing up, that gap up between waking up in the morning and enough sleep for that particular person. So again, we were talking about doing backward math to figure out bedtime. So another way sometimes of figuring out bedtime is that we go all the way out to really late bedtime, and we don't do lights out until we're really tired, and then slowly, when bedtime is established, that going to sleep, even if it means they're getting much less sleep, is getting established, then we can slowly bring bedtime earlier and earlier.
Thanks, Lucy. Okay, two teenagers who share a room and won't shut up talking late at night. Any advice?
I know. Well, I sort of half love it, if I'm totally honest with you. And because I think that's lovely. It's a lovely relationship. It's a lovely connection. I used the word earlier about boundaries, talk about digital boundaries, about the boundaries that we put in place as parents, about whether we, turn our phones or what we eat, when we eat, and when the kitchen closes and things like that. And somewhere in that, you might need a little boundary where we say, okay, guys, no talking after X time, and let's set an alarm, and let's agree that we got to switch off because we've got to be sleeping, and because we want to do well in school or we want to do well on the field. So again, it's getting that little buy-in. But like, I secretly kind of enjoy what you're talking about too.
Mm. One here, is reading okay until literally reading until you fall asleep? Would you say there should be a break between the two?
No, I actually think that's a really good wind down activity. Now, again, depending what story you read, they might say, look, read with a red light. I personally read with a backlit Kindle. And again, there's a little bit of, always, is that the right thing to be doing? Reading is a really good relaxing. And I think reading a book is almost like a lost art. I hope that it isn't, but it feels like that sometimes. A return to those activities are, again, helpful to help sleep. And a bit like, I talked about, doing this relaxing activities in the evening time, where maybe we do a puzzle together, or maybe we do a word search together. Sometimes those activities would not have been foreign 20 or 25 years ago, but now they feel like, oh goodness me, that we never do that anymore. So just a return to some of those, more general activities to help replace the ones that have become more modern, and I think reading, long answer, sorry. Yeah, I think it's a good thing to do to relax.
There's a question here about magnesium. Any thoughts on magnesium for
Yes.
sleep?
Yeah, I think I included in my little list of things that are helpful. Now, again, you can get a magnesium spray. I wouldn't want you to be taking magnesium supplements unless you've actually discussed it with your GP. But of course, magnesium can be a missing link for sleep. But again, we can't just say that in a blanket way, okay? But like a magnesium spray on the legs is sometimes a really good part of a bedtime routine. And discussing like magnesium use with either your GP or your pharmacist can be helpful. But magnesium is important from a sleep point of view.
Okay, thank you. Two last ones. So there's a few that came in around, and they're sort of the same email in a few different ways. So we covered the three really. So we put them all into one and call it loads of activities, right? So this is the one around life is just so busy. There's so much to do. You mentioned the homework, but it's there's swimming and there's clubs and there's activity, and then where's their time for the rest? Where's their time for sleep almost? So
I know,
because it is such a, like you said, one of the three pillars. It's such a huge part and thing that needs attention. Would you say it's almost worth sacrificing some other things and prioritizing the sleep more?
Like, you see, I feel like I sound like a crazy person when I say something like that. Does that make any sense? And my own children, have been in classes and training late. But we did sometimes make key decisions about, look, can we do it this many nights a week or not? It kind of depends on what's problematic within the family, okay? So if sleep is a big issue and, your young person is having trouble switching off, or they're not getting to sleep until really late, in the early hours of the morning, and they're waking up overnight and they are not getting enough sleep, I might decide, let's put a little plan in place. We put this on hold, and we prioritize sleep, because lost sleep is sleep gone forever. And remember, all of those functions determining emotion, growth, repair, are all being impacted when we don't get enough sleep. So I guess I will prioritize sleep and suggest that prioritization, but I am practical too. So again,
Sure.
bit of push and pull and figuring that out with us, with the person and the child themselves, and assigning the value, like where are we going to push our values in terms of, it doesn't have to be one or the other, but I think that we sometimes have to have a juggle and a balance between things, you know?